Thanks for watching this episode of the Vital Point podcast. I wanted to give you some context just so you don't get confused. This episode was originally published on Instagram, and when I published it, the podcast was called One Question Wednesday. The reason for that being that I watched this amazing video with Gary Vee where he talked about if you want to do a podcast and you're just starting off, why don't you try a 90-second podcast? And I knew I wanted to talk about transformation, about integration, about breath work and meditation and things that were a little bit heavier than 90 seconds. But I thought, what if we just keep it to one question? And so that's what I did. So two things came out of that. One, much shorter episode. So these videos are a lot shorter than some of the more recent episodes you may have been checking out on my channel. And two, I just wanted to get them out. You know, I was just learning about podcasting. I had another podcast that I had gotten the idea for, recorded 5 or 6 episodes, and then sat on them, not really being able to put them out for almost a year, you know, worrying about the editing, worrying about the distribution and the marketing and what to do. And so the idea with One Question Wednesday was to do the exact opposite of that. From the time that I saw the video from Gary Vee to posting the first episode with Ayahuasca Car was less than 2 hours. And so, you know, 60% became the new 100%. It is a little bit messy. It's, you know, that was my idea. I didn't want to get trapped in a cycle of perfection. Didn't want to get stuck. And I was just figuring things out, which worked out great. So wanted to get those episodes off of Instagram where they've been living and onto YouTube to get into a bigger audience and have all of the podcasts be under one umbrella. So if you haven't checked out the more recent videos, we're on season 6 now. Definitely subscribe to the channel. There's a lot of content on there. And this first season is really defined by not having any equipment. Season 1 ended when I realized I really needed a microphone, and I've got a nice one now. So season 1 was recording onto my phone, a couple of episodes on Zoom, and then not having a microphone. But the content is fantastic. The guests are fantastic, and there's some really valuable content about breath work, about ayahuasca and psychedelic integration. And, you know, I think the content stands on its own. So I'm still really proud of it. I'm proud of the guests that I've had on this podcast, and I hope that you enjoy it too. If you're interested in learning more about psychedelic integration, coaching, breath work, how to use breath work to support, you know, connecting to your purpose, having a more resourced and regulated nervous system for working with psychedelics, I'd love to chat with you more about that. There's information below about how you can get a hold of me for that. And if you're not part of my newsletter, definitely click the link below to join. You'll get a free guide to using breathwork for integration to start with, as in addition to, you know, staying up to date with the breathwork circles that I'm holding, workshops, information about the podcast, all kinds of amazing stuff. So hope you enjoyed this video. Just wanted to give some context. So, you know, when you're watching it and it says One Question Wednesday, you're like, wait, I thought this podcast was called The Vital Point. It is The Vital Point, and the vital point is to practice, that you have to put these things into practice. But like I said in the beginning, when this was recorded, One Question Wednesday was what I was doing. So I hope you enjoy it. Cheers. This is One Question Wednesday, our podcast where we ask our guests one burning question a week. And our guest today is Kyle Buller, also known as Setting Sun Wellness here on Instagram. He's a co-founder of Psychedelics Today, as well as a life coach, spiritual emergence coach, breathwork facilitator, and all around awesome guy. So Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I'm having trouble here with my thing. Maybe I'll just hold it. It was all set up and then my screen got a little shrunk due
It
to
always
the
happens.
sizing. Yep, cool. I'll hold it. This will be easier.
Cool. Well, we're really happy that you're here on the show today. I really wanted to have this brief discussion with you because I think you're in a really neat place between, breath work and psychedelics, which I think if you looked at a Venn diagram, would have a lot of overlap. So I was interested to kind of get your, get some of your thoughts on that. And so the question for today's show is, how does breathwork fit into your work with psychedelics? And what types of breathwork do you facilitate with your clients?
Sorry, it broke up a little bit there. Yeah, might be the internet.
No worries.
So how does breathwork fit into my work with psychedelics? That was the question.
Yeah, and then I'm interested to know what types of breathwork do you facilitate with your clients as well?
Yeah, so I guess it might make sense to do a little breathwork background to understand how breathwork fits into psychedelics. So yeah, the lineage that I come from is with my teachers, Lenny and Elizabeth Gibson. Hey Beth, what's up? They're at Dream Shadow Transpersonal Breathwork, and they're from the lineage of holotropic breathwork. They're students and colleagues of Dr. Stanislav Grof. And for those that don't know who Stan is, he's a pioneer in LSD research. So got interested in psychedelic research when he was over in Czechoslovakia, over in Prague. He was doing a lot of psychedelic psychotherapy over there, then came over to the United States, did a little bit of research here, and then the counterculture hit and all that research got locked down.
Right.
And so after the research got locked down, Stan found himself over at Esalen over in Big Sur, California. And there, he ended up developing a breathing technique called holotropic breathwork with his wife, Christina, at the time. And I think the interesting thing is that this technique, as Stan was watching people have these extraordinary experiences, was also very similar to the LSD experience and psychedelic experience. And so Stan bringing all of his clinical research and his, I guess, framework for understanding those states was really able to then integrate it into the breathwork modality. And so that's the lineage that I come from. And, how does it relate to psychedelics? Well, I guess just thinking about how powerful the experience can be. We can get to psychedelic-like experiences through breath work. And I guess that the theories of Stan Grof pulling directly from his psychedelic research.
Yeah, awesome. I'm a huge fan of Stan Grof. I'm certified in neurodynamic breathwork, which was created by Michael Stone, one of Stan Grof instructor. And so a lot of the principles and a lot of the things that that we were taught, pulled directly from Dr. Groff's work, and just really fascinating stuff, especially like talking about the perinatal matrices, like the experiences that we can have that, according to Dr. Groff's research, are us releasing trauma that happened in the womb or, as we were being born, that we carry around with us until we, are able to release it through psychedelics or through breath work. It's just incredibly fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it's super fascinating.
So you do holotropic breath work then with your clients?
No, so I never went through what's called the GTT training, which you might be familiar with. So I just study with my teachers, Lenny and Elizabeth, and they've developed what's called Dream Shadow Transpersonal Breathwork.
Okay.
And so, like a lot of students of Stan, they've kind of, am I back? Cool. Yeah, a lot of students of Stan, they've kind of taken their own thing, just like kind of Michael Stone has taken his work with holotropic breathwork and created his school. So the type of breathwork that I do with clients is, much shorter formed. I mean, holotropic breathwork sessions last anywhere between 2.5 to 3 hours. When I am running workshops, I will do maybe like a shorter version of that, in smaller groups, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And then I will host the longer workshops too with the Dream Shadow community. Usually those are done in a weekend. And then thinking about how I incorporate that into my counseling practice is really seeing where the person's at. Actually, so for my master's thesis, I took elements of my breathwork training and experience and tried to really kind of figure out how we could integrate that into a therapy practice, specifically for those struggling with different types of trauma. And so the way that I really broke that down was looking at kind of three phases of breath work. And so the first one would be somebody is highly activated, and they're not really able to contain the experience within them. So doing a slower, deeper breath, kind of more like a meditative breathing, just to really activate that parasympathetic nervous system so we're able to regulate. And then if people want to go a little bit deeper into their process, and so yeah, thinking about like the counseling, only have about an hour there. I'll facilitate a shorter version of, holotropic breath work in a sense, or transpersonal breath work. The basic concept of evocative music and then intensify the breathing. So really encourage people to start by deepening their breath, circular inhales, exhale, and then with eye shades and well, no, typically not headphones, with a speaker system. And people can start to then have release, physically and emotional, like catharsis. So that's how I really kind of incorporate that into my work at the moment.
Awesome. Yeah, that was really curious to me because I feel like within the breathwork community, there's always like, kind of a debate between like where breathwork fits in terms of plant medicine or psychedelic work. I've heard some people say like, oh, I like to use it for preparation, or if somebody's
Yeah.
new or they're curious about exploring plant medicine work, psychedelic work, but maybe they've never had that type of experience before. They're not comfortable with the idea of like letting go that much with a psychedelic, or they're so dysregulated that you're as a facilitator, as a therapist, you're just not sure if it's a good fit to throw them in the deep end right away. And then on the other
Yeah.
hand, like I've heard other people say like, no, this is a great thing to use for integration, like after you have a psychedelic experience. And for myself, like just being a little bit familiar, not as much as you, with Stan Groff's work, that was one of the things that struck me when I was learning about him, was like he basically developed the breath work from seeing people coming out of these deep LSD experiences
Yeah.
and then starting to breathe to like take them back into the peak experience. And that's actually something that I've played with in my own like medicine work as well, is like kind of on the last third, let's say, of the journey, like doing some breath work to kind of kick me back into like a deeper state. So either like integration or like on the tail end of the psychedelic work. So I was just really curious about that.
Yeah, and that's really helpful for people, say if they don't have full resolution after an experience. So that's what Stan started to notice, was people that didn't have a full resolution through their psychedelic experience. If you could create that deeper, faster breathing, that could bring them back to an experience and hopefully do more processing. And so, yeah, I mean, I found it to be a really great integration tool. I stumbled across breathwork when I was 22. And this is after some really just intense psychedelic experiences that I was going through, and still processing a near-death experience that I had when I was 16. And when I came across breathwork, it felt like the integration modality. I mean, it really helped me to process things so differently, without the substance, which was really interesting. And on the prep side, yeah, I work with clients like that all the time. So beginning to offer ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, noticing where people are at, and it's a really great testing ground, because you're learning also navigation skills, kind of like somatic
Mm.
awareness and somatic processing through breath work. So being able to offer just some deep breathing techniques before actually going into any of those medicine assisted sessions. So really trying to provide the tool set for people so they know how to really kind of navigate that space and regulate themselves once they kind of get into that medicine space. So yeah, it can be a really, really helpful practice and tool.
I love what you said there about the skill sets having some overlap, because that is something that I've experienced as well, as like, especially like really deep into a breathwork experience, like kind of having this awareness of a familiarity with the space. Like, oh wait,
Yeah.
this feels familiar. I've been here before, maybe not while I was breathing, if you know what I mean. So like,
Yeah.
so yeah, and also just being able to navigate and having awareness, having some faculty around being in this expanded state of awareness. That's a really great comment there.
Yeah, and just thinking about like when difficult emotions arise
Mm.
in, say, psychedelic experiences, I think the one thing that breathwork has taught me is to really how to stick with the experience. And so, in the breathwork, when we say, if you really want to amplify the experience, like say, emotional content that's coming to the surface, I mean, really breathe into that, make it bigger. And so that's a technique and a practice that you can, then integrate into, say, a psychedelic experience when, a difficult experience is starting to arise or yeah, content starting to come up that it just feels really uncomfortable to sit with. What is it like to breathe into that space? What is it like to be with that and use the breath to really kind of navigate that? And so, what we're doing there is kind of navigating the psychic space, but we're also regulating our somatic sensations as well. So it can be a really just great navigation tool that I always come back to.
Yeah, and how self-empowering that, you can have this realization of like, oh, I can reach this state, I can have this experience with just my breath. I don't have to go down to Peru or work with a shaman or, ingest anything to have this type of experience. So that's really awesome.
That's what I was amazed with. I really was pretty skeptical the first time I had a breathwork experience, and I mean, it really blew me out of the water. And that's what one of my teachers said too. When he was working with Stan, he said, that reminded me so much of my LSD experiences when I was younger. And yeah, Stan just looked at it and said, yeah, that's what kind of turned me on to this too. Just being able to reach those similar states. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. That was really a great conversation. And I do want to respect the format of the show and your time as well. So, where can people get a hold of you or learn more if they want to work with you?
Yeah, so my personal site here at Setting Sun Wellness and settingsunwellness.com, or you can check us out over at psychedelictoday.com. That's, I feel like, where I primarily hang out is at psychedelictoday.com. So we have a podcast that we put out twice a week, and then have a bunch of education over there. So that's on any podcast platform that you listen to podcasts, or at psychedelictoday.com.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for being on One Question Wednesday today. Really enjoyed the chat, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jonathan. Really appreciate
All
it.
right.
And take care,
Yeah.
everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks. Cheers.